passenger. You see the picture.
Hey, Roger, get up here. What's up? Keep walking backwards. Do not do anything else. Do not reach down. Keep walking backwards.
Walk back to me! Keep on walking! Now!
You're in fucking prison, that's what's going on.
What did I do?
For the rest of your fucking life.
What did I do?
Who else is in the apartment?
Nobody, my girlfriend's dead.
Inside?
There's somebody.
This previously unreleased body cam footage shows Kenneth Walker being apprehended by police on the night his girlfriend Breonna Taylor was shot and killed, while police executed a search warrant on the 26-year-old's apartment. On September 23rd, 6 months after the raid, Kentucky Attorney General Daniel Cameron announced no charges would be brought for her death.
While there are 6 possible homicide charges under Kentucky law, these charges are not applicable to the facts before us because our investigation showed, and the grand jury agreed, that Mattingly and Cosgrove were justified in the return of deadly fire after having been fired upon by Kenneth Walker.
AG Cameron made what happened that night seem relatively simple. 3 officers, now former Detective Brett Hankison, Detective Miles Cosgrove, and Sergeant Mattingly, shot their guns that night. Cosgrove and Mattingly hit Taylor, and they were justified because Taylor's boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, fired first. As far as criminal charges for Taylor's death were concerned, the case was closed.
The truth is now before us. The facts have been examined, and a grand jury comprised of our peers and fellow citizens has made a decision.
Burn it down! Burn it down!
But the public wasn't satisfied.
No lives matter till Black Lives Matter! No lives matter till Black Lives Matter!
People here are not happy. They're not happy with just 3 counts of wanton endangerment for Brett Hankison, nothing for the other officers.
A $15,000 bond for one murder! One motherfucking murder!
One grand juror even filed a motion to break the secrecy that normally surrounds grand jury proceedings, alleging the Attorney General was using the grand jury's decision to shield himself. Tapes of prosecutors presenting evidence were released on Friday. Vice News has also obtained much of LMPD's own investigative file, which includes hundreds of hours of body cam footage and officer interviews, as well as thousands of pages of documents. And together, they tell a more complicated story than the one the public heard.
This is Sergeant Amanda Seeley of the Louisville Metro Police Department's Public Integrity Unit. Today,
Over the course of 2 weeks following the raid, the 7 officers who approached Taylor's door gave their accounts of what happened that night to investigators from the Louisville Police Department's Public Integrity Unit, which investigates officer-involved shootings. These interviews were later played for the grand jury.
so like I said, this is about the incident that occurred on March 13th, 2020 at 3003 Springfield Drive, apartment number 4.
And right away, discrepancies emerged, including in basic info officers say they knew going in.
All that we knew is it was a female's apartment, I believe, as an ex-girlfriend.
I don't recall her name, but she resided at that location. And that's all they knew.
We were told that it shouldn't be a problem. It was supposed to be her and her kid, maybe like her and a small child there.
Didn't know anything about kids or dogs or anything like that.
We made our approach to the apartment. We knocked on the door. We announced police multiple times.
This is one of the most crucial points, whether or not officers announced themselves. Walker says he never heard them, and more than a dozen neighbors told us the same thing. But in his press conference, the AG focused on one witness, who he says corroborated the officers' stories.
So you said you did remember them saying something as they were knocking on the door?
Yeah, they're knocking on the door.
What were they saying when they were knocking on the door?
There's the cops.
This is the cops?
Yeah.
What the Attorney General didn't share is that that witness had told something seemingly different to police investigators back in March.
Did you ever hear anyone identify themselves as police?
No, nobody identified themselves.
Jurors heard summaries of both these interviews, plus a third one conducted by the AG's office in June. All of the accounts were confusing, which jurors pointed out, but the detective made it seem clear.
I asked him the question. He answered that he heard them announce police, police before opening the door to go outside. So he heard it with a closed door between him and the outside.
But the witness's lawyer told us his words had been misconstrued, and the police officers only told him they were police. Once officers ran through the front door, things appear to get even hazier.
When I reached down, I hit it. Boom, boom, boom. Police with a warrant. And I hit it. First hit was on the door handle, and then after the third hit, it flew open, and that's when it hit the fan.
The door comes off the hinges. So I just let off one shot. I still can't see who it is or anything.
And it goes boom, and as soon as the shot hit, I could feel the heat in my leg. And so I just returned fire. I got 4 rounds off. And it was simultaneous. It's boom, 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 boom. And then I went back and went down on the side of the door and then reached around, and I think I got 2 more off.
So now the door's flying open. I have 1 shot, and then all of a sudden there's a whole lot of shots.
As soon as the door popped open, rounds were coming.
Okay.
It was like pop, and then pop, pop. It was like boom, pop, 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 pop.
What I saw at the time was a figure in a shooting stance, and it looked as if he or she was holding an AR-15 or a long gun, a rifle.
I turn, and I see that John Mattingly is being pulled or scooched back or is somehow moving back from behind me. And I can hear nothing. It is completely muted. There is no sound. And I did not have any pain sensation or any recollection that I'm firing a gun. If you told me I didn't fire a gun, I'd be like, okay, I believe you.
But as they were pulling him, that's when Detective Hankinson moved up and was returning fire there.
Because I knew my threat was here, we were here. I returned my threat at the muzzle flashes that were illuminating this sliding glass door right in front of me.
Approximately how many shots do you think maybe were fired from inside the apartment?
It seemed like more than 5 gunshots I heard.
It sounded like 8 to 15 rounds.
I don't even want to estimate how many shots, but it was a volley of shots, and then it was a boom, 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 boom.
Boom, 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 boom. Several shots at that point, it seemed like then. Yeah.
Pat McLaughlin is a crime scene expert who spent 20 years as a detective with NYPD. And he's not surprised there were inconsistencies in the officers' stories.
A lot of people tell you to talk to witnesses. I was never a fan of it because sometimes when people give a narrative of what's going on at one of these events, they'll say, I was standing here, but then you'll find a video 6 weeks later and they were actually over there. And that can tend to lead you a little bit astray.
At one point, there's a lull in the shooting where officers stop firing into the apartment and then start again. Walker never lets off a second shot.
There was a little bitty moment of no shots. I was like, here's the time to go. And then it all started up again.
I feel like I shot from 2 different locations. I shot a volley of shots here, and then when I moved over to closer to here, to this red car's parked at, I can still see this window lighting up, flashes and gunfire. And that's when I decided to put additional rounds through here.
You've seen your fair share of crime scenes. You have over 1,200 photos for this one. How does this one compare? What does it look like? How would you characterize it?
Scientifically speaking, I'd say it's a mess.
Run her out to the side. Where?
The raid wasn't just a mess, according to people weighing in afterwards. That night, a SWAT team was across town executing a related search warrant. And they say they had no idea about the raid on Taylor's.
What do you say?
EMS on Springfield? Where's Springfield?
Under the 3rd Division. That was another target house. My first ever notification of
something going on over at Springfield is when the voice came over the radio and said, we need help over here. We have an officer that's been shot.
We have an officer shot on Springfield.
We're going to go ahead and take the Bearcat, and we're going to go down. You guys hold. They have an officer shot on Springfield.
All right, go.
Where's Springfield at, boss?
As these chaotic situations unravel, like the address they gave at first was a different address than they were actually at. So it took a little bit to get there. We had to actually ram the Bearcat through a chain link fence.
Here comes the fence.
By the time SWAT officers arrived on scene, it was clear things had gone horribly wrong.
Get upstairs, locate.
What the? We just got the feeling that night that, something really bad happened.
He said there's a female. He's saying 9mm. He said she was shooting. She's down. He said she's down in there. We have down like a male said she's dead. She's down, but we weren't rushing in there to check.
We want everybody to be safe, right? That's our ultimate goal. Is we don't want us to get hurt, innocent people, and even the bad guys. I mean, if no one's got to die, they don't have to die. Like that's, as we debriefed and kind of looked over, it was just an egregious act.
Lieutenant Dale Massey, the commanding SWAT officer on scene, found a loosely controlled group of officers and didn't exactly hide his disdain.
I tell all the patrol officers, check your rifles up, because they're still literally just pointing, and they don't know what they're pointing at, more or less. I mean, the target identification, there's nothing to point at because there's curtains and everything else. They're just pointing a gun, just to point a gun.
Hey, everybody check up! Check up! Check up! Check up! Check up!
I got it. I'll plate it. Plate me here.
As I'm looking through that sliding glass window, our initial thought is, oh, they're shooting out the window at the police.
Those are my rounds through this window. Okay.
And I know at one point they were pointing at the window, and Detective Hankinson looked over and kind of made a motion like that, like tapped his chest almost to say, yeah, that was me type thing.
Oh, watch out!
Moving.
Move. Short. Clear. Let me grab this bag real quick.
Yeah. Hey, don't turn your cameras off. Apartment 4 is now a crime scene. Let's go ahead and move out.
LMPD's own protocol says officers involved in critical incidents must be separated out and paired with an escort officer. But in this case, officers continued to walk freely around the crime scene.
After they cleared it, I went up and tried to make contact with all the apartments to make sure they were okay.
Did peer support make contact with you? What did you do at that point?
Okay. I hadn't really thought about that. I guess that's what I'm doing, just walking in the parking lot with Cole. At some point, we are told to kind of go away.
So you make contact with peer support, and then does peer support provide you transportation here to PIU?
Yes. I'm not exactly sure when. Michael, I think his name is Michael. At some point, I came in contact with Michael.
And then there's Hankinson, who walks right into the crime scene.
What's this address?
Is anybody here dead?
Yeah.
Detective Brad Hankinson came up to me at the front door, and I explained to him that, man, we locked it down. This is a crime scene. Watch out, don't step on casings. So I think it's casings right there. Sorry. Like if they're your all's casings and their casings. I didn't know that he was involved with the shooting at that point in time. From my experience with my officer involved, like I was immediately assigned an escort officer.
When you are approaching a crime scene fresh, what are kind of the first things you do?
First thing we do is make sure that it's as secure as physically possible. You don't want people walking in and out of it.
But I'd back out until they get PIU in here. So let them get out of here. It's a crime scene. I said let them get out of here. We have to be mindful what we say. We're on camera now, so. Yeah, bye. Come on.
Investigators say they told Hankinson to leave the scene and find a peer support officer around 2 a.m. But instead, Hankinson went to the hospital, where several other officers and command staff had gathered.
I was waiting to see what was going to happen with Sergeant Mattingly. I saw Brent Hankinson walk through the ER. I was surprised by that because, the typical response is that someone from public integrity is usually tasked with keeping up with the officers involved to make sure that they get back here.
Did you ever make contact with peer support that night?
Yeah.
Other than at the PIU office?
I believe, and I don't know everybody's in peer support, but I believe there was one person at the hospital that was from peer support.
It's unclear if Hankinson ever made contact with peer support that night, something the grand jury had questions about.
They asked him where he went after the incident. He said he went to the hospital. And they kind of asked him to speak to anyone, and I think he said he spoke to his chief. Is that about the extent of it?
I believe after the shooting incident, Louisville advised that peer support to talk to the officers involved in this.
Right, but it didn't sound like he
doesn't reference that.
Hankinson didn't report to PIU to take photos and hand in his gear as evidence until around 3:45 a.m. Detective Nobles and James went to the hospital earlier in the night with Mattingly. In the ambulance on the way over, James takes Mattingly's gun and shot-through wallet, which are now both evidence, and then stashes them in Nobles' car.
After I was in the hospital for a while, I was like, man, I don't like carrying this gun around. I want to secure it.
Right.
So I got Mike's keys and I put it in the back of Mike's vehicle with his wallet.
Okay.
The two pieces of evidence weren't collected by PIU until later that morning. Attorney General Cameron has assured the public that his office's investigation was independent, but it's clear from the grand jury tapes the extent to which his team relied on LMPD. Most of the evidence presented came from LMPD's investigative file, and most of the officer interviews were conducted by the police department. Cameron's office only appears to have questioned 2 of the 7 involved officers.
So you all only included what was provided to you?
We did independent interviews.
But as far as like people who processed the scene, it's just what they gave you?
As far as the scene processing, yes.
It was just the information they would have given you from that is all you know?
Yes.
The tapes show jurors are asking questions about Taylor's death and pointing out inconsistencies, but on multiple occasions, they're not given conclusive answers.
In a lot of the interviews, they would say, oh, here, let me just draw it for you, it'll be easier to understand. Did you all get any of those drawings?
I haven't seen them.
And here's the thing, a lot of the testimony and the ballistics reports are contradictory. But when it came to settling on specific facts, A.G. Cameron appeared to give police the benefit of the doubt. Ballistics analyses, for instance, couldn't actually say for sure who shot whom that night, which officer shot Taylor, or whether it was Walker's bullet that struck Mattingly.
The KSP and FBI ballistics analysis reached different conclusions, creating a reasonable doubt in the evidence about who fired the fatal shot.
To Cameron, that was enough to cast reasonable doubt on who killed Taylor, but he presented as fact that Walker shot Mattingly.
Keep walking backwards. Walk straight back or I'll send this dog on you. Walk back to my voice. Walk back or I'll send this dog. Walk back to me. Who else in the apartment? Nobody. My girlfriend's dead.
Keep walking. Stop. Keep walking. You know how to walk, right?
The gun's legal. Like, everything. We don't even know who it was.
I don't know who it is.
She asked 10 times who's at the door.
They put the cuffs on me and stuff, and then they're walking me away. And that was it. That was the end of everything.
Ah! 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 Ah!
Throughout the investigation, Walker is consistently listed as a suspect, Mattingly as the victim, and Taylor as an involved other.
There seems to be 2 justice systems in America. One for black America and one for white America. And this has been emphasized by this grand jury proceeding into the killing of Breonna Taylor.
People that are questioning this, not only from a community or from a media or from a prosecutor or defense attorney's point of view or a jury's point of view, but the more data you give, the more thorough investigation you do, the harder it is for people to come away from it and feel like it was completely ignored or the best possible work wasn't done.
Protesters were angry with the grand jury's decision. Releasing audio of the proceedings was supposed to shed light on how they got there. But what's missing from the 15 hours of tapes is the most important part: the prosecutor's recommendations to the jury. A judge may still grant jurors a right to speak openly about what the AG actually told them. Until that happens, we won't know whether murder charges for any of the officers were ever even an option.
Until your investigation returns the results that the police officers who murdered Breonna Taylor, and until those officers are fired from this department, I promise you, we will continue to make these streets hot.